Imagine attending your own funeral. What would people say, about you, about your character, your contributions, the difference you made? Really makes you think, huh? And it's the perfect place to start our deep dive today. We're looking at Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Powerful way to kick things off. Gets right to the heart of what matters, doesn't it?
It really does. We're going to unpack Covey's ideas for effectiveness, for your personal life and how you work with others. Think of it like a roadmap to being truly effective. And it all starts from the inside out.
A lot of us get stuck, in that personality ethic,
Right.
trying to hack our way to success, quick fixes, surface level stuff. Covey wants us to go deeper, build our lives on something more solid, like a character ethic.
Okay, this is interesting. So let's break it down. Paradigms. What does Covey even mean by that? And why are they so important for being effective?
You can think of paradigms like mental maps, the maps we use to navigate life. They shape how we see things, how we interpret them, and ultimately how we make decisions. But think about this. What if your map is wrong? Like trying to find your way through Chicago using a map of Detroit.
You'd be lost, for sure. No amount of effort or positive thinking could help you then.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to really examine our paradigms and maybe even shift them. You know that aha moment, like suddenly seeing the hidden image in one of those optical illusions? That's a paradigm shift. It's about challenging what we assume is true and being open to seeing the world in a new way.
Paradigm shift sounds like a game changer. But how do we even know if our paradigms need adjusting? How do we see those blind spots we may have?
One way is to look at the results we're getting in our lives, in our relationships. Are we getting what we want? Are our interactions with others actually benefiting everyone involved? If not, it might be time to take a look at those underlying beliefs that are driving our behavior, those paradigms.
Covey tells that story about the man on the subway with the kids who are being disruptive. At first, he's judging the guy, thinking he's a bad parent. But then something happens. His paradigm shifts when he understands the man's situation.
It's such a good example of how we jump to conclusions based on incomplete information, based on our limited paradigms. As soon as Covey sees things from the other man's perspective, his whole reaction changes.
Makes you realize how often we just react, based on assumptions, on our own internal maps, without even trying to understand where the other person is coming from.
And that lack of understanding, that can lead to so much conflict, so much frustration in all our relationships. It's a huge barrier to really connecting with people and collaborating effectively.
Okay, so if paradigms are the maps, what are the guiding principles then? What can help us be genuinely effective? What's the true north on this journey?
Covey believes that principles are like natural laws. They govern human effectiveness, much like gravity governs the physical world. Think about things like fairness, integrity, honesty. Those are universal truths. They're the bedrock of a life that feels truly fulfilling.
So you're saying these principles, they're constant, no matter your culture, no matter how you interpret them individually. They're like the foundation for a meaningful life, a life that has an impact.
Exactly. And this is where we see the big difference between the personality ethic and the character ethic. That personality ethic, with all its quick fixes and techniques, might give you temporary gains. But it's like building a house on sand.
And the character ethic, that's like building on solid ground, on a foundation of principles. It's about focusing on who you are at your core, trusting that outward success will naturally come from that inner alignment.
Exactly. It's an inside-out approach. And that brings us to this fascinating concept, the PPC balance. Think of that fable about the goose that lays golden eggs. We tend to get so focused on the gold eggs, those results we want so badly, we forget about the goose itself, the source of those results.
So it's not just about chasing results, it's also about taking care of what's producing them. Makes sense. It's about sustainability, being effective over the long haul.
That's it. Burnout, relationships falling apart, even things like damage to the environment. We can often trace these back to an imbalance in that PPC equation. We have to nurture our physical and mental health, our relationships, our skills, if we want to keep laying those golden eggs, so to speak.
This connects to another idea, the progression from dependence to independence to interdependence.
Yeah, that's a big part of Covey's framework. You just can't achieve true interdependence, that ability to create great results with others, if you haven't developed your own independence first.
Like you said earlier, it's all about building from the inside out. Got to be self-reliant, responsible for ourselves before we can really collaborate with others and achieve those public victories out in the world.
You got it. And that's where those first 3 habits come in. They're the groundwork for what Covey calls private victories. Those personal wins that lead to real independence. to mastering yourself.
Private victories, that's the foundation for everything else. They're what we need to achieve those public victories in the later habits.
That's exactly it. It all starts with ourselves. And that's what we'll pick up in our next deep dive. Exploring that first habit, be proactive, and how it sets the stage for everything else. Welcome back. So we've laid that groundwork right with those private victories, the habits that help you become truly independent, self-reliant. Now we're moving into the realm of public victories. This is where those principles really come alive in how you interact with others.
I'm ready to dive into this. It feels like so much of our effectiveness depends on being able to collaborate, to build those strong relationships, to navigate all those complex dynamics that come with working with other people.
Absolutely. And that's where habit 4 comes in. Think win-win. It's all about approaching your interactions with this belief that there's a solution out there, one that benefits everyone involved.
Sounds simple enough, but I can already see how this could be tough to actually do, you know? We're so used to thinking in terms of winners and losers.
It's definitely a paradigm shift. You have to move away from that scarcity mentality, that idea that there's only so much to go around. And if someone else gets a bigger piece, well, it means less for me.
It's like that feeling you get, right, when you see someone else succeeding. And instead of being happy for them, you feel that twinge of jealousy or competitiveness. You start to question your own worth.
Exactly. A win-win mindset is about embracing the opposite, an abundance mentality. There's enough success out there for everyone, enough happiness, enough fulfillment. It means you can truly celebrate other people's wins without feeling threatened.
Yeah, that is a powerful shift. It takes all that pressure off, you know, that constant need to compare yourself to others, to compete. So how do we actually put this win-win thing into practice? It can't just be wishful thinking, right?
It does take effort. You're right. It's a conscious choice to cultivate this mindset. Covey breaks it down to 5 key dimensions: character, relationships, agreements, systems, and processes. It all starts with your own character, though. Things like integrity, maturity, and that abundance mentality we were just talking about.
So it's another inside-out approach, just like the other habits. You can't create win-win situations out in the world if you're not coming from a place of genuineness, a belief in abundance.
Right on. And then it's about those relationships, building strong ones built on trust and open communication. That creates the foundation for making clear agreements, outlining everyone's expectations, responsibilities, consequences in a way that's mutually beneficial.
It makes sense. If the systems and processes within an organization, if they reward people for collaborating and finding ways to benefit everyone, that's going to reinforce that win-win mentality.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You can't just tell people, think win-win, and expect it to magically happen. You need to create an environment that actually supports that kind of thinking.
Covey talks about that training program he developed, where he initially clashed with those executives. They wanted a traditional top-down approach, but he had a different vision, a more learner-driven model.
Yeah, that could easily become a win-lose situation, each side digging in their heels. But Covey, he took the time to really understand where those executives were coming from. And he worked with them, to create a program that addressed everyone's needs.
Must have taken a lot of patience and a real willingness to listen to what the other side had to say. Seems like a perfect segue into habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
It's such a powerful principle.
Yeah.
It's the key to truly connecting with people, to communicating effectively. We're so quick to jump in, trying to solve problems, offer solutions, give advice, before we even really understand the other person's perspective.
It's like that analogy, right? The optometrist just handing you his glasses instead of taking the time to examine your eyes. It just doesn't work that way.
Exactly. We have to shift our thinking from I need to be heard to I need to understand. It's all about empathy, letting go of our own agendas, our own biases, and truly listening to grasp the other person's world.
So it's not just about hearing the words. It's about understanding what's behind them, the emotions, the deeper meaning. Covey talks about reflecting feelings, right? Not just parroting back what someone said.
You got it. You have to create that safe space for the other person, make them feel heard, validated, and that opens the door for a real connection, a real dialogue.
Covey tells that story about his daughter when she got sick. His first reaction was to fix it quickly. He called the doctor, but in his rush to solve the problem, he messed up. He didn't even tell the doctor his daughter's age correctly.
It's a great reminder that even when we want to help, when our intentions are good, we can still get it wrong. If we don't take the time to really understand the situation first, diagnose before we prescribe, right?
So seek first to understand doesn't mean you just passively agree with everything someone says. It's about actively trying to see things from their perspective, understand their feelings, their needs.
Exactly. And once you've reached that level of understanding, then you're in a much better position to share your own thoughts and feelings. You've built that bridge of empathy, and that allows for a more productive, more collaborative exchange.
This makes me think of habit 6, synergize. Recognizing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. When you bring different perspectives together, different talents, you can create something truly amazing.
It's the magic of teamwork, of collaboration. It's about valuing those differences, not seeing them as obstacles. Covey uses that example of a classroom filled with all sorts of different animals: a duck, a rabbit, a prairie dog.
And instead of trying to force them all into the same mold, the teacher recognizes their unique strengths and creates a learning environment where each animal can thrive.
It's about celebrating diversity,
Right.
and using it to solve problems in a creative way.
Exactly. And Covey introduces this really interesting concept called force field analysis. It's about recognizing that any situation is a balance between driving forces, those things pushing for change, and restraining forces, those things holding it back.
So instead of just trying to make those driving forces stronger, we can also look at ways to weaken the restraining forces, like removing the obstacles that are preventing progress.
Precisely. And synergy can be this powerful tool to transform those restraining forces, turn them into driving forces. When you create an environment where people feel safe to speak up, to share their concerns and ideas, that's when you can find those incredible solutions. Covey tells that story about mediating a conflict between a bank and a real estate developer. It was tense, you know? Both sides felt like they were trapped.
But by using those principles win-win and seek first to understand, he helped them talk to each other, see things from a different perspective. They found common ground and came up with a solution that worked for everyone.
Wow, what a great example of how synergy can bridge those divides and lead to those breakthrough solutions. It highlights how important those earlier habits are, too. That foundation of self-mastery and empathy, it's crucial for collaborating effectively.
You nailed it. Those private victories, they set the stage for the public victories of habits 4, 5, and 6. They're all connected, building on each other to create this framework for effectiveness, not just for yourself, but in how you work with others.
It's making me realize that these habits, they're about so much more than just individual success. It's about creating a different way of being in the world, more collaborative, more understanding, and ultimately more fulfilling.
That's the heart of it. And they pave the way for habit 7, sharpen the saw, where we shift our focus to something essential: renewal.
That's where we're headed in our next deep dive. Be ready to explore the crucial habit of taking care of your most valuable asset, yourself. Welcome back. So we've been on quite a journey. We've covered those private victories, the ones that empower you to live a life guided by principles. And we explored the public victories, those habits that help you build strong relationships, relationships where everyone benefits. And now we're at the final piece. Habit 7, sharpen the saw.
This habit is all about recognizing something really important. You are your most valuable asset. And taking care of yourself, well, that's essential if you want to be effective over the long term.
You know, it's like that saying, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. It's true. We can't give our best to others. We can't achieve our goals if we're running on empty.
Covey uses a great analogy to illustrate this. He talks about a lumberjack. This guy's struggling to cut down a tree. His saw's dull. He's working harder and harder, but he's barely making any progress. Someone suggests, hey, why don't you take a break? Sharpen the saw. But the lumberjack, he's insistent. I don't have time.
Classic case of being busy but not effective. We get so caught up in the day-to-day, we forget to do something crucial. Renew ourselves.
Exactly. Covey reminds us that sharpening the saw means taking care of ourselves in 4 key areas: the physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual.
It's a holistic approach, then, to self-care. It's not just about hitting the gym or eating healthy. It's about nurturing every part of who we are.
That's it. Let's start with the physical. This means taking care of your body through good nutrition, exercise, sleep, and managing that stress.
It's about finding activities you actually enjoy. Right, making exercise a part of your routine, not a chore.
A lot of people have the wrong approach to exercise. It's all no pain, no gain, pushing themselves until they're exhausted. Covey suggests a different way. Challenge yourself, yes, but also listen to your body. Find that balance.
And we can't forget sleep. In our culture, it's always go, go, go. Sleep is often the first thing to go, but we're realizing how important it is. Sleep deprivation really affects us, our bodies and our minds.
It does, not getting enough sleep. That can affect everything. Your mood, how well you think, your immune system. It even increases your risk for certain diseases. Getting enough restful sleep, that's non-negotiable.
Okay, so let's move on to the mental dimension. This is about keeping your mind sharp, engaged, through things like learning, reading, writing, and solving problems.
Covey was a big believer in lifelong learning. He thought that continuously learning new things, developing new skills, that was crucial for personal growth and for effectiveness.
He encouraged people to read a lot, explore different perspectives, different ideas, do things that challenge them mentally.
Writing is another powerful tool, for mental renewal. It doesn't matter if it's keeping a journal, writing letters, or working on some creative project. Expressing yourself through writing, it can be really helpful, like therapy even.
It's like you're sorting through your thoughts, your experiences, making sense of it all.
Now let's shift to the social-emotional dimension. This one's about nurturing your relationships, developing empathy, compassion, strengthening those communication skills.
It's about making those consistent deposits, right? In that emotional bank account we discussed earlier, those acts of kindness, consideration, respect, those are the things that build trust, that strengthen those bonds between people.
And it's not just about your close relationships. It's about finding ways to give back to your community. Make a positive difference in the lives of others. Helping others, that can be a powerful way to renew yourself socially and emotionally.
And finally, let's talk about the spiritual dimension. This is about connecting with your core values, finding a sense of purpose in life, and living in a way that's aligned with your beliefs.
It's about taking care of your inner life, making time for reflection, meditation, prayer, connecting with something bigger than yourself.
And this doesn't have to be tied to any specific religion, right? Or any belief system. It's about tapping into that sense of wonder, finding what inspires you, what gives your life meaning.
Covey believed that renewing yourself spiritually, that's essential for integrity, for inner strength. It gives you the courage to be your true self and to make a difference in the world.
So habit 7, sharpen the saw, it reminds us that taking care of ourselves isn't selfish, it's an investment in our effectiveness, our well-being. When we nurture ourselves in all these areas, physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual, we create an upward spiral. A spiral of growth.
It's a cycle, a positive one. When you're feeling good physically, that affects your mind, your emotions. When you're mentally sharp, you're more effective in your relationships, at work. When your relationships are strong, you can handle those tough times better. And when you feel connected to something bigger than yourself, that gives your life purpose, meaning.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Stephen Covey's 7 habits, I'm curious, what really resonated with you? What stood out?
Think about it. What's one small step you could take today to start sharpening the saw? Maybe it's scheduling that workout, or calling a friend you haven't talked to in a while, or just taking a few minutes for yourself to reflect, to just be.
Remember that exercise we started with, visualizing your own funeral. Think about how you're living your life right now. Does it align with what you hope people will say about you then?
Even small changes, consistent ones, in these 4 areas, they can make a big difference in your effectiveness, in your well-being. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep striving to live a life that's principle-centered, effective, and fulfilling.
恭喜你又听完了一本书，订閱以便不錯過更多精彩節目，也別忘了分享給你的朋友，一起快樂聽書學英語。